Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. In today's episode we are going to talk about an incredible book called The Green Book of Dunhuang. It is probably one of the most beautiful books in the world, with exquisite paintings from the 15th century. The book got its name because it was discovered in the Mogao caves at Dunhuang in China, and it is considered to be the most comprehensive illustrated book from the Ming dynasty, which lasted from 1368 to 1644. Most of you probably have heard of Dunhuang before. It is famous for its 1,000-year-old Buddhist art treasure trove that consists of over 500 cave temples filled with sculptures and colorful. However, there are more treasures hidden in this place. In 1900, the caves were still inhabited by a monk, who was guarding these treasures for over 30 years, until a British explorer convinced him to sell some of the items. So let me tell you a little more about Dunhuang. Dunhuang is located near the Gobi Desert in the northwestern province of Gansu, which was one of the most important hubs along the Silk Road, connecting China to Europe. When Buddhism came to China via the Silk Road, the Mogao caves became one of the biggest centers of Buddhist learning and culture. The Chinese emperor at the time donated money and land for monks to build their dwellings inside the caves. Over the next few centuries, merchants, pilgrims and donors contributed to the beautification of the caves with marvelous sculptures and frescoes. At its peak, around 2000 CE, there were around 700 caves, with many containing hundreds of Buddha statues. Unfortunately, only 492 caves survived until today. The first recorded excavation of the caves was in the early 5th century, when a monk named Lejong requested permission from the then emperor to excavate a cave to practice meditation. However, it is said that he found some magical relics of the past and turned his cave into a temple. After hearing this news, more and more people wanted their own space inside the mountains to worship Buddha and meditate. So they began carving out caves. The majority of the caves date from the 4th to the 14th century. However, the oldest cave dates back to the 3rd century BC. When Buddhism had not yet arrived in China, you may ask, why did they dig holes in the mountain? Well, to put it simply, this is the easiest way to construct a large building without disturbing the natural environment. By carving out entire chambers instead of building with wood or brick, they could maintain harmony with nature while giving themselves shelter. These caves were mostly dug out by hand, using only simple tools like hammers, chisels, and ropes. The soft sandstone made it easier to carve, and left behind a smooth surface. These caves could withstand earthquakes, bandits, and even military invasions. Even though some of them collapsed over time, the rest are still standing tall after more than 1,500 years. Back in the early 20th century, the caves were still home to about 20 monks who lived inside and kept watch over the priceless artifacts. However, in 1907, Sir Arl Stein, a British explorer, paid a visit and asked the elderly monk in charge if he could purchase some of the ancient manuscripts. The monk agreed, and this marked the beginning of the end for the Dunhuang caves. Stein ended up buying over 20,000 pieces and shipped them to the British Museum. He returned to Dunhuang 2 more times and acquired many more Buddhist texts and artifacts. After him, other explorers followed his steps, including Ott, who purchased over 100,000 pieces. In 1914, the Chinese government finally realized what was happening and sent someone to stop the leaks. But by this time, many priceless artifacts had already been smuggled out. Today, there are more than 60,000 pieces in over 30 museums around the world, with the largest collection being in the British Museum. One of the items smuggled out was the Green Book of Dunhuang. The story of how it left the country is quite mysterious, and nobody knows who exactly brought it to Europe. We only know that it arrived in Paris in 1923. Its original owner apparently hid the book in the bottom of a pile of cotton bales and managed to get it out of the country unnoticed. Eventually, it changed hands and was renamed the Vermilion Book of the Mogao Caves. This is because the cover was made of gold leaf and red silk when it arrived in France. The Green Book was created in 1475 during the reign of the second emperor of the Ming dynasty, Emperor Cheng. It was commissioned by a wealthy merchant who hired an artist named Wench Gingming to illustrate the text. The book was intended as a gift for the emperor. It contains a total of 32 leaves and 29 double-sided paintings, with 4 lines of poetry written by the artist himself. All the illustrations depict various Taoist deities and scenes from Taoist mythology. It also includes some Confucian gods and Buddhist bodhisattvas. The style of painting used in the book is called Ennui School, named after the province where it originated. This school of painting flourished during the Yuan and Ming dynasties and focused heavily on landscapes. The painters aimed for simplicity, elegance, and a depiction of nature with minimal human intervention. As you can see, the landscape takes up a large part of the painting, and the figures seem small in comparison. The colors are mainly light and dark green, which gave the book its name. However, we can also see shades of blue, purple, and black. Some of the animals depicted include cranes, deer, rabbits, fish, dragons, and elephants. Overall, the work is highly detailed and shows the artist's mastery of Chinese painting. If we take a closer look at the paintings, we can see just how much detail went into each one. For example, the fur of the rabbit is so realistic you can almost feel it. Another painting depicts the 8 immortals of Taoism crossing the sea. They are all riding fantastic creatures and playing musical instruments. Many of the paintings also contain puns and play on words, which makes the images more interesting. Now let's talk about the paper used for the book. It is made of plant fibers, which is typical for Chinese paper. However, this book was bound with gold thread and covered in green and red silk. Unfortunately, the cover was lost over time. Most ancient Chinese books were bound with string or hemp and covered with plain paper. High-quality materials like silk and gold were reserved for books intended for the emperor or very wealthy individuals. When the book arrived in France, it was thought to be complete. However, in 2014, another leaf was found and added to the collection. The additional page appears to be the last page of the original 32 pages and is similar in size, shape, and quality. The only difference is that it was folded differently and had a different type of binding. Experts believe that the extra page was separated due to careless handling rather than being intentionally removed. The Green Book is now kept at the Musée Guimet in Paris, where it is one of the museum's most prized possessions. It has been displayed numerous times since 1925 and continues to amaze visitors with its beauty and craftsmanship. And that's all for our journey through the fascinating history of Dunhuang and the exquisite Green Book. Don't forget to subscribe and stay updated on our latest adventures. If you want to learn more about the art, history, or culture of any country, do let me know in the comments below. Your suggestions will inspire us to create more videos for you. Until next time, keep exploring.